Ganeshahaya Namah. Greetings to everyone world over, all our brothers and sisters across the globe in different countries, in different continents, in different conditions, in different time zones, in different health and wellness, whether mental health or physical health or wellness, or besides that, of course, economic challenges also world over people have gone through. We do not want to remember 25th of March 2020, but it has given a lot of lessons to us. So today, every Friday is dedicated to reinstating the women rights webinar, and series is going on right from 25th of March. Ours is a chamber which deals with the services sector, and we are focused during this pandemic on education and, of course, our teachers, our youth, our children, our parents, and the entire ecosystem of education and skills fraternity. Today is the 1442nd webinar. More than 12,000 speakers have come since 25th March 2020. We extend a very warm welcome to the Golden Triangle this morning, this afternoon, this evening. People, those are joining from Canada, Latin American countries, and United States, a very warm, very good, very green morning to all of you. People, those are joining from Europe, a great afternoon to all of you. People, those are joining us from Middle East, Central Asia, early evening to you. And people, those are going to have their glass of milk, haldi's milk, turmeric milk as an Ayurveda in ASEAN countries, is little late for you. Wake up, remain awake for next 1 hour, and we do the justice, because every day you all are with us, and our immediate past president is also in the ASEAN region. And then we come to beautiful Bharat, wonderful South Asia, and all the brothers and sisters, those are joining across the globe. Hearty welcome, namaskar, pranam. और इसी के साथ साथ Dr. Sarika, Dr. Medha, Dr. Suchita, we extend them a very warm welcome this evening, and let's go on. Today is International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So the last suffix is very important. International Day of Women is separate in the March. It's an International Day of Women and Girls in Science. So that is the context, and we convey our gratitude, thanks, and blessings and everything across the globe, wherever they are. International Chamber for Service Industry extends a very warm welcome. We are totally focused on services sector. We all understand the economy has got three parts: agriculture, manufacturing, and services. Grateful to Colonel Casey Mannon. Today's evening, Friday evening, every Friday evening is dedicated from Colonel Casey Mannon, who is our regional advisor, entire southern part of India. And he has been bringing this program right from 25th of March. Grateful to him. Education, skills, and micro, small, and medium enterprise are inseparable. Shiksha, Kaushalta, and Udmita. We got to take all of them together to make India self-reliant, Atmanirbhar Bharat. Of course, education, teachers, youth, all are important, but most important is what to talk about 5 trillion economy, what Prime Minister Sir is telling. We can go to 10 trillion economy. What we need is women got to be given entrance, recognition, and whatever you want to convey in all walks of life, everywhere they should be there. During this pandemic, we have been focusing on teachers and youth empowerment. Our chamber brought India's first finishing school way back in 1994, because we deal with the Indian diaspora. The first Pravasi Divas started in 1994, but Pravasi Bharatiya Divas started in 2003. After we all made the presentation in 2002 to then the Honorable Prime Minister of India. Now, this particular finishing school, 52,000 youth have gone from here, 35,000 teachers have gone from here across the globe, and they are giving a beautiful sprinkling fragrance across the globe. The only thing is this pandemic has done to us is a lot of challenges across, and finishing school, brick and mortar, has gone totally digital during this pandemic. Now it's known as e-Gurukul for service industry. We start early in the morning at 4 o'clock in India, because that time it's somewhere around 10 o'clock, 9:30, depending on different time zones, Australia, New Zealand, and then we move across. This is the 7th program during the day, touching all the continents of the world. eGurukul brings education and school through inspirational lab. I'm not going to elaborate that because time paucity is there. This program is going live on the YouTube. You can see it later also what all we have got it over here. Why not education and skill should be relevant to our day-to-day life? That is something very important. Services exports is very important from India. We got to be taking care of it. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., we are going to have our 91st program, Ayurveda for the global wellness. People, those are above the age of 60. If you want to live healthy, if you want to enjoy wellness, you must come for this program across the globe because we take specific questions from the different countries for everybody. Ayurveda for the global wellness, tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. And then tomorrow, we take you to 8 beautiful states of Northeast India Educators Forum tomorrow evening at 8. Sunday morning, you meet the president of the chamber all the way from the Woodbury University, Burbank, California, USA. And he is nowadays talking about a Samavesh, amalgamation of 100 different leaderships taken together in the holistic leadership for universe. Our chamber is going to be the pioneer in Northern India. We are starting human library vision for the entire North India because a lot of retired defense officers, judges, IS officers, doctors, and other verticals of the society. So Chandigarh is taking the lead, becoming the hub for the entire North India. And we are going to start the human library vision. Of course, it's very old. It started from Denmark way back in 2000. And thereafter, other countries, couple of people they have taken. So empowering youth, empowering teacher, my story. Lieutenant General KJ Singh will talk his entire lifetime story, how he got into the armed forces. So library, not silent, library, which is vocal with the communication, with connecting. And Napoleon Hill, finally. Whatever your mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. Let's come together. Let's work together. This program, all are available on the YouTube channel. You can meet 12,000, the best confluence of the global wisdom on this at the GS Motivator. So let's extend a very warm welcome to today 1442nd program. We have got Dr. Sucheta ji, Dr. Medha ji, and Dr. Sarika ji. So ladies and gentlemen, from world over, join me in extending a very warm welcome with Colonel Menon. And I have taken only 9 minutes, Colonel Menon, today. Instead of 10 minutes, you gave me 10 minutes, I've taken 9 minutes. So as a good soldier, as a junior officer, I think I have come up to your expectations. Now, let me come to the expectations of the Golden Triangle, which we have got over here. We will start with Dr. Sarika ma'am, then we'll go to Dr. Medha ma'am, then we will go to Dr. Suchita ma'am. Kindly introduce yourself, take your time. If should you wish to show any presentation, anything, you have got all the rights, everything is available with you. Take your own time as per the command and instructions from Colonel Menon, and we'll do justice with the subject. You can have the overview of the Union Budget of 2022. You can also talk about special focus on education and skills. Besides that, you can also talk about not women empowerment. I will talk about reinstating the women rights. That is something very important. Today is a very pious day for me because my voice is reaching you. My mother turns 90 today and it's my mom's birthday. And I'm very proud son because she brought me to this universe and I'm here because of my mother. I convey my deepest gratitude, regards and salutations to the female folk. And we go over to Dr. Sarika Rachuriji. Kindly unmute your mic, ma'am.
Thank you for such a warm welcome. Hello, friends, my esteemed members from the fraternity, my esteemed co-panelists, students, and everyone. It's such a delight and joy to be speaking on the overview of Union Budget under the banner of ICSI. I am Sarika Rachuri, and I began my career as a undergrad teacher in Nasimunji. I went to do my MPhil in JNU, and I've worked in different sectors: electricity, power sector, energy, commodity markets, municipal finance, and again, taken a full circle and back to teaching, which is my calling. I have done my PhD from Bombay University, so this is a little bit about me. So can I have share screening the lights for
all the rights are with you, ma'am. All the rights.
Okay. So 1 second, just give me a second.
We have reinstated the rights of women from our chamber. Whatever we can do from our side.
Yes, so I'm here to present an overview of Union budget with a special focus on skill development, education, and women empowerment. So this is how I have. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah, ma'am. We can see you can increase the size of the screen, ma'am.
That's what. Yeah. Just give me a second.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is how I have structured my presentation. I'll start with a brief macroeconomic backdrop. So macroeconomic backdrop is very, very important because it sets the stage in which the union budget is presented. Then we will understand what is the policy dilemma the finance minister was facing when she was crafting this budget. What were the key challenges the country is facing? What have been the key thrust area, the major planks of the budget? It's very interesting to understand the fiscal arithmetic of the budget. How has this union budget been making a paradigm shift from the earlier ones when it comes to the fiscal composition? And of course, for what we are, impact of union budget on skill development, education, and women empowerment. So first things first, this is the second consecutive year in which the budget has been presented amidst the COVID overhang. The cloud of COVID, with new variants coming, with complete uncertainty, whether these variants are just like passing clouds or they're going to stay. All this has created uncertainty across the world, and there have been immense supply chain disruptions. So they have dampened the animal spirits, a term in economics which we use to say that, okay, should we invest? Should we go ahead with massive investments? So that have been dampened. And there have been, because of these supply disruptions, prices have increased, especially because of increase in crude oil prices. So that has increased the inflationary pressures. So inflationary pressures are fuel-led. And I think always charts speak more than and better than numbers. Because of these reasons, under this backdrop across the world, policymakers are struggling to carve out a growth trajectory for themselves because they are facing high persistent inflation. So in advanced economies and in developing economies, IMF has again revised its estimate and said that compared to last year, the GDP will shrink. Say to 4.4%, that's the world output. So these are the estimates which have been given by IMF. Now this chart here shows us the crude oil prices, which is at $91 a barrel. And inflation is all-time high, 40-year high in USA, nearly 7.6. So these are very worrying factors at the world level. And because of which Fed, okay, this Fed Reserve, which has brought about a change in its policy stance. So earlier in March 2020, it had lowered interest rates to 0% in response to COVID. 2021, it reviewed and felt that the inflation is going to be very transitory. But it was because of the 7% and a persistent rise in inflation, it felt it's been caught off the guard, and now it has become again very hawkish with regard to its monetary policy. Back in White House, when there has been a change of guard and emergence of green parties, with the Paris Agreement, the targets for climate change will become more credible and more stringent, and that will also constrain investments in fossil fuel, which will give rise to crude oil prices. So this is the macroeconomic backdrop of the world. Closer home, India is plaguing with high unemployment, the most worrying factor for FM and the country. The country is facing and witnessing a weak rural demand, tepid consumption, and a very low capacity utilization. Capacity utilization is like all-time decadal low, and there is sluggish credit growth, which is way lower than the deposit growth, and there is a rise in crude oil prices, as we have mentioned. So when there's a rise in crude oil prices, the current account deficit, okay, comes under a peril. And but luckily, we have software exports. The software exports are called invisibles, and they have tripled from 2013. Almost 3 times now, and that has been giving a cushion to the exchange rate. Plus, the relieving factor is we have a very comfortable foreign exchange, nearly of $634 billion. But inflation is a cause of concern, and when we look at the CAGR GDP, we are almost back to what was there in 80s, the 3-year CAGR, the Hindu growth rate, close to 3%. So again, the charts give a better idea about these facts. Now, if we look at unemployment, we can see that, just give me a second. I'm trying to annotate. I can't find the annotation button. Okay, anyway, so the unemployment is at 9.3%. You can see Jan-March 2021. GFC, the gross fixed capital formation. Now, the gross fixed capital formation, friends, is a proxy for investments. It is as low as 27.09%. Once upon a time, in good days, it was as high as 35-36% of GDP. So when the gross fixed capital formation goes higher, it means that investments are happening, animal spirits are high, private investments are going high. And look at this chart on my extreme left. It is showing total consumption, government consumption, exports, gross fixed capital formation. They all in 2020-21, as you can see, are growing at have grown at different trajectories. These are, of course, the advanced estimates. This is the third column. Just a second, sir. I just want to actually annotate, and I'm not able to find the annotation button. If I get the annotation button, 1 second. Have I been given the annotation rights?
You've got all the rights, ma'am. You've got complete rights. If you want, I can make you co-host.
No, that is, there's an annotation button which comes here, which I can't see. Never mind. So this shows that they are all growing at different trajectories. And this is because of the total consumption at 7%, the investments at 15%, and the GDP is set to 9.2%. The sad part is because of the weak rural demand, private consumption, which is a very, very important component of the GDP, is falling. It's fallen to 57.5% as per the economic survey, and the budget estimates are even more conservative. Inflation is hovering at 5.59%, so close to 6%. So under this backdrop, the budget was crafted. It placed the finance minister in a very catch-22 situation because she had to reconcile with conflicting objectives. Unemployment on one hand, low growth momentum on the other hand, and rising inflation. So there was immense pressure of, providing informal support to the informal sector, which has been badly hit because of the pandemic. But there was not much fiscal space. Fiscal largesse was less because any increase in fiscal expenditure would take them away from their targets and would create a fear of downgrade by the credit rating agencies. So if the credit rating agencies downgrade us and have a junk status, it will have a massive and an adverse impact on our investments. Now, union budget is not a arithmetic accounting exercise. Economists look at union budget very differently. It impacts every type of expenditure, every allocation has an impact on one or the other macroeconomic variable. Consumption, investment, government expenditure, and net exports make up the aggregate demand. And this is entire macroeconomic identity. Now, for instance, I'll give you just an instance. If the government, if a finance minister decides to reduce taxes, it immediately spurs up consumption because the purchasing power of people go up. On the other hand, if the finance minister says no, rather than allocating money, reducing taxes, let me increase and give a plank stance to Atmanirbharta, it will impact net exports. So the finance minister has to be very careful because every pie, every penny has an impact on these macroeconomic variables one way or the other. So budget is a very powerful tool for reallocation of resources. So the budget, Union Budget 2022, the outlay was 39.45, highest ever from so many years. And macroeconomists not just look at the size of the budget, but also look at the size of borrowing, which is called as fiscal deficit. So if you can see, the fiscal deficit has increased from 3.5 in 2020-21, it was 9.2%, and then 21-22, 6.9, and 22-23, she wants to bring it down to 6.45%. So fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP. So we had an FRBM target, which means that one cannot spend because we had problems in the mid-90s. So in order to arrest that, FRBM Act came, which said that fiscal deficit should not exceed 3.5% of the GDP, right? But there's an escape clause when a calamity happens or any adverse event happens. The finance minister has the liberty to bypass the targets. Fiscal deficit is not so worrisome as the revenue deficit is. Revenue deficit, so the entire budget has two parts, revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure. Now, revenue deficit, increase in revenue deficit shows that all the borrowings that you are doing are being spent on consumption expenditure. And the nature of your expenditure is more consumption-led. So we can see across the years, revenue deficit has increased from 2.1% all the way to 5.1%. What I usually do to find out how much of the fresh borrowings are financing revenue deficit. So I find out revenue deficit as a percentage of borrowings. And you can see that in 2016-17, it was 59%. But in the COVID years, it went up as high as 80%. That means all the fresh borrowings are actually going to finance the revenue expenditure. And that's not heartening because no assets are being created. 22-23, this has come down to 59.61%, and that's really heartening. So every budget has a centerpiece and a major policy plan. The major policy plans of this budget are infrastructure, manufacturing, PLI, startups, Skill India, and MSME. So infrastructure push has been the pet project of this incumbent government, not from today, but from 2019. So in 2019, the finance minister announced that nearly 100 lakh crore should be spent in 5 years. Sharma sir was mentioning that the economy needs to reach to $5 trillion. So for this to be achieved, amongst all the expenditures, the finance minister opines that spending and giving a big push to infrastructure will have a very catalytic effect. So in 2019, nearly 100 lakh crore, which would be staggered over 5 years, was decided, not through the budget outlay, but through the public-private partnership route also. Now, if the government wants public-private partnership to spend so much, it has to increase its outlay to give a nudge so that more investments crowd in. So if you can see from 2014-15, rupees trillion, the infrastructure spendings have come up from 1.81 to almost 5.97. But then we were again hit by COVID pandemic, and then that put a stop or a dampener. But this year again, the entire thrust has been to increase the infrastructure spending. Now, what happens when we increase and we give a push and a greater allocation to infrastructure spending? The nature of the spending is very capital intensive. The budgetary arithmetic changes. So if you are spending on infrastructure and if finance minister is giving a greater outlay to infrastructure, then slowly and surely the composition changes from revenue intensive to capital intensive. Now, this chart on the left, you can see, shows for 23 years, FY01 to FY23, what has been the size of the budget. So from 3.3 lakh crores, it's gone up to 39.45 lakh crores. But capital spendings have always been less, and most of our expenditures are revenue driven. That means we are spending more on consumption expenditures. But the highest capital expenditure, as you can see here, is 20%. 20%. This was before the was in the year 2004-5, a golden year for our country, where our GDP was growing and our capital expenditures as a percentage of budget outlays 20%. But then what happened? There was a Lehman collapse happened, and then the entire composition of the fiscal, the budgetary allocation changed, and the expenditures became more revenue driven. But if you can see here again, if you look at 23, can you see this whole huge rise and increase that has happened of capex? So this has been the signature and the major thrust of this budget. FM is trying to bring about a change in the composition and is trying to prioritize capital expenditure by bringing them back to the 2004-5 level to nearly 20%. So what is the economic thinking behind it? So she is just applying conventional principle of multiplier, which says that if you spend money on roads, ports, railways, infrastructure, you generate what is called as a multiplier effect. And as per studies, the multiplier effect is 2.45 for capex. That means for every rupee that the finance minister spends on roads, rails, ports, the GDP multiplies to 2.45. So, it is not, it increases in that progression. So imagine if 7.5 lakh crores are being spent, according to this estimate, more than 15-16 lakh crore would be an increase in the GDP. Now this increase in GDP happens with a lag. And in this process, backward, forward linkages get created, people get jobs, the industries which are having less capital expenditure start opening up, and the economy again comes into a virtuous cycle. The second plank of the union budget was manufacturing. As Sir said, and Sharma Sir said, that we are all very interested in the service sector, and he brought out the sectoral contribution very beautifully. So India has done phenomenally well in terms of service sector, and its contribution to GDP is very high. But what the incumbent government wants to do is bring a change and bring us, increase to step up manufacturing. And its signature policy is PLI, Production Linked Incentive Scheme, okay, which is going to kickstart MSME, which is going to kickstart startups by looking at some sectors. So what does PLI do? It is nothing but a scheme which is going to incentivize production in indigenous domestic production. So if these producers in these 14 sectors produce more, they will get incentive, like a subsidy. So the government initially started with 3 sectors, then it extended to 10 sectors, and now there are 14 sectors which are dedicated to production linked incentive scheme. And the budget has been has given a big push to PLI and Atmanirbharta. So these sectors have been selected on 2 fronts. There are some sectors which make the country competitive when it comes to the exports. There are some other sectors under the backdrop of high import tariff create self-sufficiency, what in Hindi is called as Atmanirbharta. Then comes startup, of course. So startup is another plank. Our country is a hub of startup, and in this budget encourages startup even in defense sector. So imagine defense, which is such a sensitive sector. The union budget has made initiatives where startups will collaborate with big companies, governments through the SPV route, and will create synergies. In terms of education, skill development, and women empowerment, there is very less when it comes to allocation, and that's what has been the biggest critique of the budget. That's what the critics have said. But there are some new initiatives which have come, which are talking about setting up digital universities. So there's a great deal of digitalization that has come. There is skill development where, drone skilling is what has been proposed. In women empowerment, the budget has imperceptibly declined to 4.3%. And there are a large number of schemes which my co-panelists, Dr. Medha and Dr. Suchita, would speak at a granular level. But what the budget has done and what people forget is that there are large number of downstream impacts on education, on skill development, and on gender empowerment. So, for instance, in education, very akin to what happened when the software boom happened, AppTech, NITI, so many sectors, so many educational hubs and institutions started coming in. So, there are demand pull factors. So, as PLI kicks in, as startups start increasing, there will be a greater demand for these institutes where high skill courses, certification courses will come into being. Ditto with skilling, even in skill development, as PLI kicks in, as production increases in clusters, as startup increase in clusters, it will crowd in people, capital, labs, machinery employment in these clusters. With regard to the downstream impact on women empowerment, when we are giving such a big push to capex construction, realty sector has 20% of the employment by women, right? So automatically women tend to benefit in terms of employment. Manufacturing sector on the surface has just 12% participation, women participation in terms of employment. But if we look at the 14 PLI sectors, there are 5 to 6 industries. The marquee PLI, the PET industry, mobile assembly, has the highest workforce who are women, nearly 70 to 80%. Ditto is the case for startups, which has 20 to 46% of the women working there. So by laying thrust on these sectors, there will be greater empowerment to women in terms of employment opportunities. And so this government does not believe in giving dole-outs, handouts. It believes in creating an ease of doing business. It believes in empowering and thus is more on the supply side. But the flip side is that when the economy, of course, it's trying these things, if the finance minister is correct, will create right impulses and the economy will move on a higher growth trajectory. But on the flip side, when the demand is so weak, when the rural demand is so weak, and when pandemic has hit the people at the bottom of the pyramid, if some kind of a subsidy would have been given, the impact would have been much faster. So that's at my end. I would ask Dr. Medha, thank you so much for being such a great audience. So Dr. Medha, over to you.
Thank you, ma'am. And we extend a warm welcome to Dr. Medha, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Sharma sir. And it's my pleasure to be here. And I'm so happy to share my views on this particular topic of women empowerment. And I'm sure that the audience must have felt that the tone is set by Dr. Sarika about macroeconomy. Now I will be talking a little more about, I'll go into the details of what happens to women and the child development. So if you permit, I'll share my screen and then I will begin. Is my screen visible to you all?
Yeah, sure, ma'am. Please go ahead.
So thank you so much for having me here, and this opportunity means a lot for me because I get an opportunity to speak about this with people other than only from economics, so that's an additional benefit of being here. My co-panelists are, of course, my friends, and that is why about whatever we will discuss probably will be in the kind of a friendly manner. But I'm sure that with this kind of discussions, every one of us will take something or the other home with these discussions. So let me begin. When Sarika has spoken something about macroeconomics, and I mean, she has perfectly set the tone of for me speaking about the budget. Just to begin with, I would like to give this basic information about what is budget and how the budget started. The word budget has come from the old French word called baguette. It means a small leather purse. That's the reason why I have actually shown this small leather purse, which Honorable Finance Minister has brought to the Parliament before speaking the budget, because earlier it used to be a book and now it is a MacBook, or I don't know, whatever. It can be a laptop or something like that. So in the shorter form, it was called as Gaulish Bock, that is a leather pouch or a purse. Actually, it is a financial plan. And this financial plan is given, especially because in the Constitution of India, Article 112, it is said that it has to be a financial statement. That is how the budget comes in the Parliament. Now, this is some kind of comparison I would like to tell. See, the first budget for independent India was given in 1947, as all of us know. It was given by R.K. Shanmugam, and the budget in 1947 and the budget in 2022. This is Amrut Mahotsav year of our independence. So look at the change in the budget. The size of budget, which was so small at that time with merely 340 million people, today with 1.40 billion people, the size of our budget has increased to 39,44,908 crores of rupees as estimated expenditure. Our revenue in 47 was 171 crore. Now the revenue is 22,83,712 crores. You see, look at the deficit. The very small deficit every year we try to minimize. I mean, we always wanted to minimize this, and this was a trend earlier. Having a deficit is not a good scene, so we wanted to minimize, but unfortunately we are unable to minimize, and today the deficit has increased in absolute terms to 16,61,196 crores. I mean, of course, when we see the adjusted inflation adjusted figures, the percentage wise also, if we see, it has increased definitely from 3%, it has increased to almost 6%. So, the change in the budget is shown over last 75 years so much. The second 5-year plan, which was given by Dr. Mahalanobis, was called as a father of Indian budget, especially because he was the one who laid down the financial statement, where we started with the first industrial plan, and that is how the foundation was laid for a constructive kind of financial statements in our budget. At present, what we see as India as 6th largest GDP economy. You see, though India being a 6th largest GDP economy with 2.93 trillion size of economy, Honorable Prime Minister is expecting to have our size of economy to 5 trillion maybe in next 5 years rather, 2025 he was saying. But unfortunately, in terms of PCI, we are not doing so good. In fact, the countries which are above us, like Japan, US, China, are much above us in terms of the per capita income. India's per capita income is merely $1,627 per annum, whereas the country which is just above us has got the per capita income of more than $23,000. US is having approximately $63,000. So imagine the gap. Now, this gap I'm just wanting to mention is because when we talk about the financial statement, we are actually talking about how difficult it is to make this financial statement and still have growth-oriented plan, growth-oriented budget. So that's the reason why I'm giving this. Let me quote the words of our Honorable Finance Minister, Nirmala Sitharaman, while talking about the budget, she said that it is a goal for Amrut Kal. Amrut Kal is the Kal which is going to come in next 25 years if we follow this budget's footsteps even in the future. The growth orientation happens when there is infrastructure, when there is development in financial infrastructure, real infrastructure, and all that. So the focus on growth is supposed to be all-inclusive welfare, which is possible with promoting technology-enabled development, energy transition, and very important as climate action. Because the time where even other countries, the developed countries, were also not following this climate action to follow the Kyoto Protocol, Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi has agreed that India will do it. And this budget has laid this foundation, not foundation, actually, we have started our National Action Plan in 2014 itself for the climate changes and mitigation of those climate changes effects. We're saying, Finance Minister is saying that a virtuous cycle, which is starting from the private investment, will allow crowd in of the public capital investment. CapEx is increased by 35%. And that shows that how important it is to have this dual economy, which we have as public sector and private sector coming together and having that multiplier effect in the future course of time. So with these four priorities, I think the growth-oriented budget, which is supposed to bring the Amrut Kal for Indian economy, will begin. The four priorities are like Gati Shakti, inclusive growth, climate resilience, and the financial investment. Let us see how far we can do it. I am actually going to focus mainly on education and the women empowerment. But still, some of the highlights which I would like people to know, along with what Dr. Sarika has said just now with the charts and with the graphs, that within whatever available, what we are trying to do is to have the Gati Shakti with 7 engines. Those 7 engines are like roads, railways, airports, ports, mass transport, waterways, logistic infrastructure, and every aspect of this is not even touched, but certain allocation is made for this. So for infrastructure, it is like rupees 20,000 crore financed is being made for spinning up of the projects. In case of transportation, 25,000 kilometers national highways have to be completed by the fiscal year 2023, and the provision is made for that. The issue is the provision is made, but how far that money can be spent for this. I mean, it's not how much, but it is how. That's the point which has to be taken into consideration. Unified logistics interface platform allowing data exchange among all mode operators is the. I mean, if you Finance Minister has talked about the chip in the passport. So this kind of technological advancement is definitely going to have impact on the Indian economy's movements. There's an open source of mobility. It's a stack for seamless level of passengers. 4 multimodal logistic parks through PPP, the private public participation, to be awarded in 2022 and 23. There's an integration of postal and railway network facilitating parcel movement. This is how it's from the perspective of supply chain, we are trying to push the growth, and over the period of time, this supply is also going to create huge amount of employment, and that is how even the demand will be pushed. So one station, one product kind of action is expected to have good productivity and the logistics for making this supply possible. There is a extending coverage under Kavach. The technology which is used by railways is actually for the betterment of the infrastructure of transportation, and of course for which it's not only the the material, but even human will also be able to get transported, for which 400 new generation Vande Bharat trains are introduced. Now, these are the highlights which I felt are important from the perspective of the budget, to show how growth orientation is being made by finance minister. Now, let me say what is for education. At the outset, the 4 points are mainly for the education. Universalization of quality education, which is needed, because in the top ranking institution in the first 50s in THE and even QS system, hardly any institution from India except IITs and IIM are able to enter. So universalization of quality education is a must to make utilization of the demographic dividend which we are having. That is one of the strength of Indian economy, but we are wasting on that strength because we do not have a proper quality education. I mean, being in the same field, I am saying that I feel bad, but then we have to bring this quality education and calculate the effect of quality education even to those people who are, at the lower, at the base level. We require digital universities. The pandemic has taught us many lessons. One of the lesson of this is online. I mean, this is a new normal even in education. Without digitalization, it becomes very, very difficult to continue the education what we are taking. And digital universities will help those people who are living in the remote areas and still wish to take a good quality education. Now, this introduction of digital university will not only expand the role of quality education, but also it will be, the right to educate, right of having education will be fulfilled with the digital universities if it is properly executed. One class, one TV channel program to be expanded to 200 TV channels. Now, again, in the pandemic, it is realized that the televisions and the channels, the educational channels on the television is actually helping those people, those children who are in the focus areas, and then even by sitting away, distance education is also possible. Now, of course, I keep my comments over here to some extent that the education in terms of science and technology education probably would not be possible in this, but then at least, there will not be the discontinuity of the education would be happening, even if the situation like pandemic occurs in the future. Virtual labs for skilling, e-labs, to promote critical thinking skills and stimulated learning environment have to be, the funds are allocated for this. Now, as I said in the beginning, the skilling is very, very important. Now, in this skilling, what we have done is in the budget, the production-linked incentives are given for 14 sectors. Now, at present, what is happening is many of the universities depend. There is a lot of gap between academics and the corporate sector. Now, when the education comes forward and link it with the production incentives, probably the skills which we are expecting, the skill sets of the people, if improve, obviously the employment, at present there are many graduates coming into the labor market, but they are not employable, and that's the reason why this gap makes unemployment problem more severe. But if skilling happens, then probably, as we are expecting that 60 lakhs of jobs will be created, that gap may get filled up to some extent. Now, the very interesting thing is drone making startups were mentioned in the speech of Honorable Finance Minister. Now, of course, this is one of the very welcomed mention, because the drone technology is the technology which is a kind of advanced technology These drones can be used even for agricultural development, you see, for spreading of pesticides or for spreading of the fertilizers, the drones can be used. And there is a lot of technological advancement which we are expecting in the sector, which is a basic, the fundamental sector of Indian economy. So this is going to have, one stone for two birds. It's like agricultural sector also will get better. The demand will also be there, and the technology education which is available in India will be utilized, will be efficiently utilized in this. And I'm very positive about it. Digital ecosystem for skilling and livelihood, that is Desh Stat e-portal, will be launched to promote online training. So in the education, especially after the pandemic, everybody has realized that in new normal, without the technology, I mean, there has to have a clubbing of technology and education, and online education would be one of the real hope for the economy to understand, to make use of the efficient demographic dividend to be generated with the help of skilling techniques. Now, let me explain you this education is going to bring what to us. This is for the first time the budget expenditure on education has crossed 1 lakh crores. By 2020, it was only 99. It was about to touch, but this is the first time it is increased. Now, of course, according to new education policy, the total expenditure on education should be at least 6%. At present, it has come to 2.4%. But nevertheless, we are actually trying to move slowly towards the expectation of new education policy. The education sector has received rupees 1,04,278 crores. That is 11% hike from the budget estimate which was there in the last year. Now, the revised estimate of 2022 budget is reduced the education budget by over 5,000 crores to 88,002 crores. The allocation to the education sector is just 2.6 crores, 2.6%. As I just said, it is supposed to be 6% because many of the emerging nations which are on a line, in a parallel line with India, are making this much of expenditure. But India somehow is unable to do it because, as I said in the beginning, there are a lot many issues. And of course, education being the fundamental thing, we have to make this expenditure here. The Department of Higher Education has been earned for earmark for 40,828 crores, which is an increase of 6.6 compound to the last year. This allocation came down from 2,319 crores to rupees 36,031 in revised estimate. So this is one where we say that we are sure that this much is there. I mean, many a times we economists, when actually we check what is the budget estimate. But then the issue is, whatever may be the budget estimate, how much is actually used, that also makes a lot of difference. Because on the basis of actual consumption of the money which is kept over here, the growth is to be declared. The Department of School Education and Literacy has seen a 13.51% jump in this year, where the budget is increased from 54,873 crores to 63,449 crores. Overall, this budget shows that there is a growth. The Central Scholarship Fellowship schemes for marginalized section administered by Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment have seen a major cut this year, unfortunately. The allocation of such schemes have declined from 2021, which was 1,395 crores, to at present it is 969 crores. The budget shows that there is a 30% decrease, which is really bad for the scholarship and fellowship schemes, because this is meant for uplifting the marginalized section. So this is not going to happen. So the Maulana Azad Education Foundation, which is funded by Ministry of Affairs and Ministry and promoters education among educationally backward minorities, has seen massive 99% cut. So the flagship of Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, which subsumes the schemes like Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, Rashtriya Madhyamik Shiksha Abhiyan, and teachers education, has received 37,383 crores, which is 20% high from 31,050 in 21-22. Now in PM Poshan, now PM Poshan 2 also is introduced, which I will speak about in the later some later time. PM Poshan says that the re-Christianized midday meal scheme has been allocated 10,233 crores, which is at the present the same. There is no change, but in fact, the impact of midday meal was really amazing because majority of the dropouts have stopped because of midday meal. So this kind of midday meal was expected to have, maybe because now we are expecting to have more kind of online education, which again the comment is with that saying that this online education may lead to the digital divide. Those people who have got the device may be able to get this education, but those people who are actually losing on their scholarships, on their fellowships, and those who are marginalized and from weaker section of the society probably would have the limitations to take this continuous education. Excuse me. There is a STAR scheme which was introduced, which was aided by World Bank. Now, this scheme has received 550 crores this year, which says that it is 13.4% increase from the last year budget. Now, letting you know this 10 points, let me conclude about the educational sector, that what we have found that in educational sector, more focus is on research, technology, advancement, and there is little less focus on the primary, on the weaker section, you know. So maybe in the future course of time, we are expecting that because the teachers will be trained, because the research is happening, there may be some kind of linkage which can be developed between the trickling down of the education from this higher group to the weaker section also. Now let me come to the budget for women and child development. This budget was talking about Nari Shakti. Gati Shakti has got the second part as the Nari Shakti. There are 3 schemes introduced this year. Mission Poshan, that is, I was talking about this. There was a Poshan in 10, that was in midday meal, and Mission Poshan is for adolescent girls and for the women and the child development. This is ICD, Integrated Child Development Program. Then there is Mission Vatsalya and Mission Shakti. Finance Minister has also spoken about the Saksham Anganwadi, which is a new generation Anganwadi. You see, what has happened is generally the Anganwadi sector is seen as a sector which is used in the rural and backward area. Now, in the rural and backward area also, if we needed to percolate the symptoms of development, I think Anganwadi would have been the best way of doing it. And that is what this budget has done. So in Saksham Anganwadi, where the new generation Anganwadi with better infrastructure, with audio-visual aids, and which covers with a clean energy, will provide improved environment for early childhood development, which is very, very required one. So 2 lakh Anganwadis will be upgraded under this scheme. Now, let me tell you how gender budget or women and child development budget is seen. From 16-17 to 22-23, the latest budget what is seen is the amount till 2021 was continuously increasing. You see, the amount, the first column speaks about what is the budget estimated expenditure. The second column speaks about what is the percent of share in the total budget expenditure. And it shows that in 16-17, it was only 88%. I mean, before that, before 16-17, the money which was sanctioned was not even 88%. Earlier, it was 82%, and before that, it was 89%. So later on in 17, 18, 18, 19, at least the money is utilized. But later on, if you, the percentage is increased. But later on, if you see from 2021 till 22-23, the percent of share in the total budget expenditure for women and child development has started declining. You see, the third column speaks about what is the size of money which is actually spent on this. The earlier years till 18-19, the money was actually used, but later on, I mean, obviously in 1920, the money which was used was lesser, maybe because the lockdown started and because the money was diverted towards the COVID pandemic situation in 2020, when not the different situation was there than that of 1920. So that is the reason. Now, this particular table I have shown because I want to say that it is not only from the Ministry of Women and Child Development, the women or gender responsive budget is seen. Gender responsive budget is seen from two sides. On one, what is the amount which is spent directly on women and child development, and what is the amount which is spent indirectly on women and child development. Part B is this indirect amount which is spent. So part B speaks about what are the different ministries in which certain money will be spent indirectly on women development. For example, when midday meal is seen, now this midday meal is not included in the budget of women and child development, but it was in the portion, it was in the health sector. But now what has happened is, now, along with this, there are many more other schemes which have introduced in maybe rural development, maybe in the cooperative sector, maybe in urban governance, maybe in housing factor. It's like Pradhan Mantri Jana Arogya Yojana or Jala Jeevan Mission or Gram Sadak Yojana. You see, now these are the schemes which have introduced in other ministries, but indirectly it will also benefit the development of empowerment of women, generating employment opportunities for the women, generating certain nutritional benefits for the women. So that is B part. Now, if you see, B part is 12% of the total budget, whereas A part is 5.99 of the total budget. So, percentage of the total budget, inclusive of these two, is almost on a similar line at 4.3 to 4.4% from 2021 to 22 or 23. So this is how this budget. Now let me explain you how these part A and part B are shown. So in part A, the schemes which are taken, the schemes which are shown on the left hand side are the schemes which were there in 2021 and 21-22. Schemes which are there on the right hand side are the schemes which have started this year, and where the budget estimates are being made for this year. So out of the schemes which are written in left hand side, except Nirbhaya, none of the scheme has got any expenditure estimation. So these are the schemes now probably will be discontinued except Nirbhaya, because these schemes were kept for protection and empowerment of women, whereas the schemes which are mentioned in the right hand side are kept for empowerment and development of the women and children. You see, so for example, Saksham Anganwadi, which is mentioned by finance minister, that a lot of money will be required for upgradation of this. Lot of technology is required. The place will be required. Infrastructure is required. Mission Vatsalya is there. A Sambal like Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, One Stop Center, Nari Adalat, Mahila Police. these are the these are the schemes which will definitely empower and bring confidence in the women that there is a possibility that in the future course of time, the gap which we are seeing, I mean, in 2021 and 21-22, rank of India in gender gap index has fallen down by 28 points, 28 ranks. From 112, it has come down to somewhere like 140 out of 156 countries. Below us, there are only 2 countries, Pakistan and Afghanistan. So we need to improve on our women empowerment policies, which is possible maybe in this. Now, besides this, there's as I was talking about part B. In part B, we have Ministry of Health, we have Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of HRD, we have Ministry of Education, we have Ministry of Rural Development, wherein the funding is done for food subsidy, which helps women also. Maternity protection in health gives support to women also. In case of public distribution system, that also will help. I have already written there that the way in which the schemes are being implemented in terms of the financial upliftment, like for pension and social security in Ministry of Rural and Development, which is increased from 22.56 crores rupees to 33,773. So it's a huge increase which is experienced in rural development. See, the informal sector, especially in the agricultural sector, the women involvement is much more, but this women involvement is not recognized because it is not the registered sector. So because women are not registered, they become more of kind of low paid and unpaid kind of job over there. And that is why women in the agricultural sector would get direct benefit if rural development says that this social security schemes will be available even for women who are in the agricultural and rural areas. Women in agricultural also requires the land reforms because, out of total, only 8.9% of land is on the name of women. You see, though the contribution made by women in the agricultural sector in totality counts somewhere like 52%, despite of that, this much is the ownership. So land reform is required. Unfortunately, now for this, the money which was sanctioned in 21 is reduced to 215 from 225. Now, there are so many diseases. What has happened is in the health, if the money is to be used for improvement of health of women, only maternity health is taken into consideration, and basically maternal and delivery time, reproductive health is taken into consideration. But if you are aware, the women who are dying out of TB and anemia are much more than that of any other diseases. So during pregnancy or even before pregnancy, how many women, the treatment should be made to anemia and not only to the gynec issues. So from the foundation, the diseases like anemia, TB should be treated, and I think for in this budget there is no such mention made here. In case of even Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, there is a possibility that in this is 2 types of Awas Yojanas are there. One in rural areas, that is Gramin Awas Yojana, and one in the urban areas. Very limited numbers of houses are on the name of women, as women do not own property, do not own assets, and that is why in Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, one claim is made that in case if the house is on the name of women, there is a possibility of giving more subsidy to the women. So this is a kind of incentive which is given. Now this comes to, is there any solution if there are any problems? And of course, the problems are seen because not everything will be foolproof. So what are the issues is basically women are, if you're talking about women as labor or women as mother or women as 50% of the demography of India, we needed to check whether the benefits are reaching to everyone or not. There are so many women to whom these benefits are not reaching. Even if we talk about ASHA workers, or even if we talk about those Anganwadi, or if we talk about the other women who are into informal, unorganized sectors, these type of schemes are not reaching. Of course, Sambal was the only scheme where the money was actually being given to the informal sector. But at present, the money which is sanctioned for Sambal also is reduced by 10%. Now, issue is also that basically this budget, being a growth-oriented budget, is giving too much of focus on digitalization. Now, you would be surprised to know that in country where there are 140 trillion, how many? 140 million people are living, only 1.18 billion people are using mobiles. Internet connect is also, of course, I don't deny that the rate is growing every year, but at the present, not everybody will have the facility of internet connection using a smart mobile. We've seen in the pandemic that many of our domestic workers were compelled to buy the smart mobiles for their children education. And that becomes too much of burden on these women. Now, if you're aware, 75% of men and 51% of women only are mobile users out of the total one. Now, of course, there is also an issue called STEM, science, technology, mathematics. These engineering and mathematics, women stay away from all this. So obviously, when there is a digitalization of the of education, of health, of finance, to some extent, the access. I think there should be a bridging program wherein even those women should be taken into the loop of making this digital reach everyone. Of course, issue which is shown by data is that we hardly get data of which is segregated data. So to have the segregated data, I have mentioned here as part B. In the indirectly how much money is spent is not foolproof evidence. So we needed to have this segregated data. A lot of money is kept for even research and data collection and documentation. I think that also have to be focused for segregation of data. Attention of health problems of women other than reproductivity should be taken into consideration. As I just said, in terms of anemia and TB, special help should be given to the health center so that they will be able to help the women around these areas. Strengthening of executional channel. This is very, so many years from 1947, we are saying that we want to reduce fiscal deficit. We want these are the welfare policies, and we want these welfare policies to reach people. But then what happens is when it comes to the execution, the channels, there is no such proper governance to check whether the money is being reaching. There is a direct benefit transfer. DBT is there. There are again a lot of arguments which are happening for DBT. How many percentage of informal sector are getting this DBTs? We also need to have agricultural sector reforms, and of course, in Poshan, Honorable Finance Minister has said that this year will be declared as a millet year. It's a wonderful move. India being a product, India initially having, I'm talking about historical time, where millet used to be a main food of Indians. But over the years, maybe when the globalization has happened, we have forgotten the use of millets for nutrition. So today we want to have improvement in the production of millet, distribution and consumption of millet. In schools, in midday meals also, if we include millets, I think the problem of malnourishment may be sorted out. So policies for transgender and sex workers are very, very limited in any budgets which we have seen. So I think there is still chances to improve on the budget if certain schemes are being given for transgenders and sex workers under Ministry of WCD, Women and Child Development. I think this is it from my side. Thank you so much for patient listening.
Thank you, Medaji. May I request Dr. Suchita ma'am now kindly to take on the floor, please?
Yeah, thanks a lot. First of all, wishing your mother a very, very happy 90th birthday. What a wonderful day to start talking about women empowerment. And I'm very happy to be here with my friends as resource persons. And with those comments, if I have to introduce myself, I have taught at Elphinstone College for about 35 years. And I worked mainly on labor economics and industrial relations. My PhD work is on managerial strategies in Bombay textile industry. And later I worked for ILO. I have completed 3 projects for ILO. One to map the effectiveness of labor administration in ILO in a tripartite system of industrial relations management. And recently I have completed one ILO project which maps the government policies to provide relief and recovery measures to the MSME and the workers during the COVID time. So in that I had to cover the steps taken by the government of India and the steps taken by the government of Maharashtra. So among other things, my interest is in labor economics, and I am particularly interested in community health workers and their status in the COVID period, which includes Asha and Anganwadi, about which Dr. Medha Tapiala just mentioned. So with that, can I share the screen?
Sure, ma'am. Please, all rights are yours.
Yeah. So
we can see, ma'am.
No, not the first slide. Yes. So this is where I begin, and yeah. So frankly, 2 of my friends have covered most of what I would have liked to speak. So that will reduce my effort, I believe, and maybe there'll be more time for question answers if there are any. But just to begin with, these are the sections in which I will proceed with my presentation. So some broad features about which my dear friend Sarika has already spoken. And then I speak about Human Development Index, because both these things that we talk about, education and skill and women empowerment, are basically things that are reflected in what we know as human development. So since we are also focusing on women, reinstating women empowerment, we would also be talking a little bit about gender development and the gender inequality. And then I will come to impact of COVID, because it's something that you can't brush aside. Though luckily we are close to the end of the tunnel, we can't kind of ignore the fact that COVID took such a lot from our society and our economy and our people. So there'll be a little bit of summary of what happened in COVID, and which, as Sarika said, kind of sets the platform on which we then realize the difficulties of fixing a budget, trying to fix the economy, to bring it back and build the resilience in the economy after it has been so badly hit by waves of COVID, which seemed unending at one point of time. So, and then I speak about the budgetary provisions, many of you, which Medha Tapiala, Dr. Medha has already mentioned. So I will be short on that. And then, of course, I will come to the conclusion. So with this structure, if I have to come first to the broad budget at a glance, then what we see is that, as Sarika has mentioned, this budget focuses more on capital expenditure. That means expenditure that will increase the productive capacity of the economy. So of course, we know that there is something called as a revenue expenditure, which is about running the present show, running the government, and capital expenditure, which is supposed to increase the productive capacity of the economy. So when you're in difficulty, of course, you will be having more money to simply run the show, which is a revenue expenditure. But if you're looking forward to something bigger and brighter, dreaming of a bigger, dreaming big, as they say, then you will be going in more for capital expenditure. And I will not dwell more upon this because Sarika has already explained this. And these, of course, are the priorities which Dr. Medha has also elaborated on. So we began during COVID with Atmanirbhar, and what complements that is the Gati Shakti. So if Atmanirbhar was about various sectors, providing credit to various sectors so that they try and grow at a faster rate and rebuild their resilience, then Gati Shakti is about providing them that fuel with which they can, move ahead. So inclusive development and sunrise opportunities, that is about startups and so on. Productivity enhancement, that is about productivity linked incentive schemes. And energy transition, about which also Medha Tapiwala madam spoke, climate change and extending digitization. So this budget is thinking of a larger digital footprint, creating a larger digital footprint in Indian economy. So these are, of course, again, I'm not going to dwell more upon it because Medha has already spoken about it. So we want more roads and better roads. We want more railways, and Vande Bharat trains are about creating trains which will improve the supply chain. You see, so especially during the COVID times when the world was walking away from China for obvious reasons, we were thinking that probably India would be the hub for filling up that gap in breakup of supply chain. It didn't happen immediately. At least right now, Indonesia and other countries have taken up that place. But if you want to catch up with that, then we need trains, we need infrastructure which would bridge the ruptures in the supply chain. And these are steps which are necessary, Gati Shakti cargo terminals, airports, ports, and mass transports. In fact, even in the last budget, a lot of the major changes were done, reforms were done about airports, private players invited to come into the airports and so on. So one way or the other, if the government finds it difficult to plug in the resources, then the government has had no hesitation in opening the doors for private sector and creating a situation in which, trying to at least create a situation in which the supply chain ruptures can be bridged. So this is about the digital footprint. Dr. Medha spoke about drones, using drones in agriculture, Kisan drones, agri-tech, right? And, the digital mode in agriculture going through the PPP, public-private participation, the national digital health ecosystem, providing and in which there will be a mental health program. This is a big innovation, according to me. And why this is big and why probably this will supplement the mental health efforts that people might be taking up either privately or through public sector support. I will come to it later. But NIMHANS will be in charge of providing support, and along with the IIT Bangalore. I think this is a very, very well-conceived integrated program for creating mental health, which has taken a big toll in the COVID times, as we shall see in some of the slides that will follow. So maybe what Medha madam meant was this is like, gender budgeting indirectly. There is data which says that women have suffered more due to anxiety and depression and domestic violence and so on, that we'll come to later during the COVID. And so the government has taken this timely step. Reaching everyone individually may not be possible, but at least creating a digital platform so that more people, whoever wants to join, can join in and can be healed mentally, is a great step. So then the digital banking and online gaming, this is a new sector which is growing at a very rapid rate. And in fact, Karnataka has already started working on providing incentives to people who are involved in gaming and so on. So with that, I go to the next one. So these were 2 slides just about budget and the major things, the thrust areas and the digital footprint of this budget. So as I said, since we're talking about education and skill and empowerment, that is the area of human development, actually. So most of the time we measure growth in terms of GDP or per capita income and so on and so forth. But there's an alternative way of looking at growth, which says that it's, who is it for? It is for human beings. So growth, just having more cars and more buildings and more roads may not make sense unless and until human beings who live in that society can enjoy it, are capable of participating in that economy and are capable of enjoying the fruits of, what the nation is producing. So with that, we come to Human Development Index. So this is my section 2, in which we will look at what creates human capability. So what creates human capability? You have teeth, then you need food. And if you have food, you need teeth. That's capability, frankly. So, chane hai to daat vagara. Okay. So what is this Human Development Index? So we create a Human Development Index, which measures life expectancy. Are you going to be living long enough to enjoy the fruits of development? Are you going to have education? So are you mentally fit? And then finally, what is the standard of living? So physical fitness, living long, mental agility, education and skill, and what is your income? These 3 things are used with weightages, and then we have Human Development Index. Sadly, our Human Development Index doesn't show very well. And so this is, so our position is 135 in the overall ranking, needs a lot to talk about. Now, if we talk in that about gender, so this is a popular index to understand gender inequality, in which we take into account reproductive health, the total empowerment of women. That means how many women are in a position to make decisions for themselves. So there are findings which say that across the sectors of society, low, middle, higher income groups, women generally tend to leave financial decisions to men in the family. So, how many women, for example, Dr. Medha spoke about women do not have, let's say, rights on housing and land and property and so on. So this speaks about empowerment. And then labor market. That means how many women actually work. Okay. So, so this is about life. This is about money. And this is about the power that comes with living long, living healthy, and having, your own bread, earning your own bread. So, and then behind that, there are these 5 indicators: how many women die during pregnancy, adolescent fertility, okay, how many women are representatives in the parliament, educational attainment, and labor force participation. So there are weightages, all these parameters are used, and you create a gender inequality index. And once again, what we see is that in 1917 World Economic Forum, India's position was 108 out of 144, and now it has slipped to, as Medha madam said, it has slipped to 140. Yeah, and a few countries in our neighborhood are better off than us. So there are these things. Economic participation, we lag behind, and that is one area for which I'm going to spend another moment little later. Educational attainment, and yes. So with that, if I go ahead, see basically what creates a capability among human beings is education and employment. And if that goes along with economic growth, then as the economy is growing, people are also becoming, their well-being is improving. So that's how there would be a kind of a configuration of human happiness and economic growth. But what we see in India is that, ever since the liberalization, rather, if you see this, the red bars here are about economic growth, and the blue bars are about employment, okay? Growth in employment and growth in GDP. So you find that over a period of time, the economic growth has risen much faster, but the employment has grown at a slower pace. This is bound to happen to various economies at various points of time when capital-intensive technology replaces labor. But if it continues for a long period of time, then it will also be a reason for unequal distribution of income. Because if jobs are few, those who have the job will have the money, and those who don't have, of course, will be languishing. Now, the next slide, next graph over here is about level of education and employment. So this is regression. That means it shows the correlation between employment. This is taken by, of course, the sources are given over here. This is from a paper which is produced by Azim Premji University. So, so the state of unemployment. So if you see the representation index, what do you mean by that? See, this first to fifth standard, if there is a high rate of high share in the working age population, whereas share of unemployed is very little, which means a large percentage of working age group is probably very less educated, according to this at least. And, whereas you come to 10th and 11th and 12th standard, the share of unemployed is very high and the share of working age population is less. Now, this may not be so bad because it means that these people are looking for more education. They are looking for more professional education. But over a period of time, what it means is employment is not guaranteeing a good job. And that may not be a good note to end with. So this is something on labor force participation. What do you mean by labor force participation? So there is periodic labor force surveys where you find out how many people are ready to take up a job. So labor force participation does not mean those who are actually on job. It means those taking into account those people who want to have a job. So what we find here, something serious and not very happy, is that India's female labor force participation is falling down. And for rural, it is falling down at a much rapid rate than for urban. This situation, of course, has changed in the COVID, and even for urban, it has fallen down further. So let me pause for a moment and say, what does it mean that the labor force participation falls? There are labor economists like Santosh Mehrotra who say that the labor force participation falling down could mean two things. One, good, and one, not so good. A good thing may be that these people are probably self-employed, probably starting their startups or doing something on their own. So they're not interested in joining a labor force. They're not interested in taking up a job elsewhere. That is probably one good thing. So maybe that means that the entrepreneurship is increasing. And the second thing, which also he mentions, is that perhaps the job market is so bleak that they don't want to enter into it. The chances are so bad that they don't want to enter into it. And they're simply somehow surviving, making vada pav on the street or something like that, somehow just simply surviving. So one doesn't know. I mean, it's a huge country and there will be no single story to emerge out of it. But it's good to keep these nuances in mind so that we can appreciate the policies that are taken up to correct. With that, I come to the third section, which is about impact of COVID. I will not dwell upon it because I think many of us know what happened during COVID. There was a supply chain problem, there was a demand side problem, there was a supply side problem, and there was unemployment and, CMI, for example, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, said there was found out that in the month of April 2020, there was about 27% unemployment. And especially medium level traders, shopkeepers and traders suffered very badly. I will not go into detail because this is not the platform for that. We are talking about budget. Just to find out the platform on which the budget was based. Okay. So then it impacted gender. There was domestic violence and the female labor force participation fell because there was a greater care work. Okay, women were required to take care of everyone at home and including the elderly. And therefore, also men were not having jobs. So at least women should stay at home and do work. Okay. And there was a lot of unplanned pregnancies during COVID. It is noted by many economists that birth control measures or the contraceptive supply was short. Also, primary health centers are totally devoted to COVID, and therefore, large number of people could not avail themselves of these, systems of birth control. And therefore, UNICEF, for example, says that there will be large number of, every 3-month lockdown, will increase more number of, births. And in that, India is likely to top. That is the UNICEF figure. Okay, so there will be now, as women suffer, children suffer, because women are looking after children. So the impact on the next generation is that there has been a school dropout. All these data are available. As I said, I'm not interested in finding out this bleak picture, just giving a backdrop against which the budget was made. Okay, a difficult period at which these dreams are being let's say seeds of the new dreams are being sown. All right. So, and then child labor has increased, child marriages have increased, and the World Bank data is available for that. Hunger has increased, mental illness, incidence of mental illness has increased. So if I just look at employment and hunger, as just two things which reduce the empowerment overall. Okay. So we find that urban unemployment rate is declining. Is it a good sign? Perhaps not, because just look at the next graph. It is because of low labor force participation. People are simply not coming up for jobs. Okay. Now, if they're not coming up for jobs, are they all of them or most of them doing their own thing or employing themselves or finding something else? That may also not be the case, because there's a hunger. Hunger is increasing at a very rapid rate. Okay. So with hunger and unemployment and so on, there's a whole social sector which has affected, and this is 2021 World Bank projection that India was affected the most in terms of loss of GDP. I think with that, I've just created the backdrop against which 2021 budget and therefore 2022 budget also, you can't just brush aside such a big setback that the economy suffered for nearly 2 years, okay, in one budget, and say that, okay, no longer that. Okay, so now here I'm going to talk about strengthening the education. So again, there will be a much overlap between what I may want to say and what Dr. Mehta has already said. So I will try and skip that portion whenever necessary. But to create a future-ready workforce, okay, all of us went through extended digitization during pandemic itself. So just as it is a challenge, it's an opportunity. Every challenge, as we say, particularly since we are in an RB setup, okay, you don't think of challenge as a challenge, you take it as an opportunity, take it in stride, if I'm not wrong, right? So, so creating that future-ready workforce, which are the areas where you want to go? Which are the areas which are going to enable this population, which the country is enjoying as demographic dividend, as Dr. Mehta said. So these are the technologies: robotics, security, privacy, AI, artificial intelligence, that is, software, bots, and jobs in future would be in the Internet of Things, that is smart homes, smart cities, smart wearables. Nowadays, even ordinary people are wearing those clocks which decide, which give us a measurement of how many steps we have taken and so on, Healthify Me and so on. So it's not just that the government is going for digitization. Even before the government went, people are actually doing it themselves. All right. So if the physical health is, if there's an advertisement of Healthify Me which catches up so many people, then the government is in its all right mind is trying to digitize health, and including mental health. As I said in a previous slide, it's a very, very innovative step that the government is taking. So gaming and e-commerce and affiliate marketing, big data analysis, all these are new areas, and for which we need to create a future-ready workforce. Now, so according to this, so what have we done so far? In 2015, we had the National Skill Development and Entrepreneurship Policy, which was initiated for the first time, and we decided that there are about 110 million people to reskill, and about 290 million by this year, 2022. This was a projection made in 2015. But India's skill report shows that about 54% of educated youth is not employable, So that's a little sad. Out of the total engineers we produce, only 7 are employable according to the National Skill Development, India Skill Report. Okay. So this is a big mismatch which we need to cover. So look at the challenges that are ahead in front of the finance minister. The COVID has put major brakes on the economic growth. The GDP has fallen down. There is unemployment, there is hunger, and there is a gap in education. I highlight education because that is the theme of this webinar. Right? So a range of activities to be taken in the PPP mode and international collaboration. This is another step which has been taken. This is one area in which we have moved a couple of steps ahead in this particular budget, as we shall see. So now if I come to the budgetary provisions. So what have we seen? We have seen what are the major thrust of the budget. The thrust of the budget is on creating the infrastructure, okay, creating a greater effective digital network for drones and for agriculture, for industry and for health and for banking, okay, for all services, all right? And then we have looked at where is the human development right now? How was it battered because of COVID? And with this background, we should be now prepared to see what provisions were made for this. Now, I'm not going to talk more about this column because most of these have been covered by Dr. Mehta, all right? So there's a highest allotment for education this time, all levels of education. So Samagra Shiksha, which is school, high school, research, and postgraduate, all levels of learning, there is a higher investment this time. So we have this PM eVidya. Last year, this was started, and we had a few television channels devoted to school learning because this was an effort to reduce the digital divide of which Dr. Mehta spoke. So not everybody can afford an Android phone and put the child on to learning. And therefore, you need to have televisions. Luckily, television network is much more deeper, into India. And maybe, one television in a Gram Panchayat can also be accessed by several children. So television still happens to be a lot more easier equipment, easier instrument to reach the masses. And so what has happened in this is that we have moved ahead in terms of number of channels. So from 1st to 12th, now there are more channels. So what it means is what was conceived last year has been added upon this year. This was also another thing with, which Sarika and I were discussing over the phone the other day, that one important thing about this budget is that there's a consistency. Okay, what the last year's budget did, we are not undoing. We are trying to accumulate, if at all, if there are any benefits on there arising from there, and consolidating on those benefits. Okay, so there are skilling e-labs. Okay, so where people can get into critical areas of critical thinking and the entire digital ecosystem for skilling and livelihood. So the kind of gap that we are talking about, only 7% of engineers being employable, or a very, very significant number of educated people not being employable. So how do you bridge that gap? So you have this step to maybe private, public-private partnership mode, a digital ecosystem to be created where skilling and reskilling can be done, upskilling, reskilling. Now, these are the areas. If we look at all those areas where new jobs are going to come up, the existing workforce may not be capable of handling that. And to assist these people, a digital ecosystem, the budget plans to dreams of creating, and that's a very, very welcome mode. Then, of course, we have digital university and foreign collaboration, especially in fintech, financial technical fintech area. And that, again, experts have lauded. What I want to show you here in this column is what experts have felt, that government's decision to provide international education in the area of financial management and fintech is a game changer, first time, right? Then launching of digital university is a great step. Launching of Desh e-portal is is important because it will reduce the skill gap, okay, without which we simply cannot move ahead. Okay, and so digital, and then it will also train teachers. You see, teachers like me need my daughter's help to come on this mode. And to tell you the truth, she's actually standing by me as an assistant in case the PPT gets stuck in between. So we need to all upgrade, okay? We need to all upgrade. And so digital university will be kind of provide that space where teachers will be able to do that, okay? So now this is about health and women, about which again, Medha Tapiawala has spoken at length. So I will not go into that, except that I think she didn't cover very much on mental health program, okay? So counseling centers will be started and tele-mental health centers will be started. I think so conceptualization is excellent. We have to only hope that implementation is also as effective. So then 2 lakh Anganwadis to be upgraded, about which she spoke. Let me just tell you that, the World Bank has, World Bank and World Health Organization has found out that the return on community health is $1 to $10. So if you invest $1 in community health, you get a return of about $10. It's a very huge investment, a very hugely profitable or a hugely high return investment. So providing Anganwadis, so right now, a lot of Anganwadis have a problem of sanitation, of clean drinking water, and firm structures. Many are dilapidated and so on. So having these 2 lakh Anganwadis, which are upgraded in terms of physical infrastructure, in terms of soft skills, and in terms of trained teachers is a great idea, I think. Because Anganwadis have done phenomenal work. I happen to have worked on this area and have also written on how they work during the Corona times. Okay, so yeah, and then Har Ghar, providing water supply. This will be again another step which will have gender, which will figure in the gender budgeting, if I'm not wrong. That otherwise women get stuck in just traveling to fill water at home. So this will be another area which has which will figure into the gender budgeting. And then household, so many households to be covered, and then this is 48,000 crores to be allocated to 80 lakhs houses in the PM Awas Yojana. So maybe the number is small, but a beginning has been done. Now, see what happens, as Sarika said, that when physical infrastructure, basically 20 to 30% of women in the construction are, in the construction area, about 20 to 30% are women. So, and also in construction, especially, the recruitment is done on a Jodi basis. So a man comes along with a woman and a woman comes along with a man. A payment is done according to Jodi. Of course, there are gender economists who say that the money is all taken up by the men. I will not comment on that as of now. But since this recruitment is on Jodi basis, it means that whenever the construction is going to increase, there will be more jobs for women. The female labor force participation will increase. And then, of course, there is Poshan. This is what will they eat? What will the adolescents eat? What will the children have? And what will the women have? So this is a triangle, okay, for women, for children, and for adolescents. And in fact, the state governments have been given freedom to utilize Vatsalya, funds allocated for Vatsalya for anything that they deem important for welfare of women and children. And government of Maharashtra has supported widows last year who lost their husbands to Corona in Vatsalya. So whereas Vatsalya was originally conceived to give support and to provide nutritional support to small children, and it was clubbed with the Anganwadi, because you see first 5 years, if the nutrition is inadequate, then it will create stuntedness and a lack of physical and mental ability among children. And so that was the focus of Vatsalya. But here, there are states which have used it for other purposes also as they deemed fit. With that, I come to the last word. So we talk in economics of something called as a bottleneck. What is a bottleneck? A neck of the bottle, in short. So the bottle has certain content, but it is not coming out because the neck is narrow. So when you have infrastructure, that neck of the bottle is widened. So the resources that you have, you can access, convert, and growth can take place. So what is this infrastructure? Two types. Okay. One is physical infrastructure, which enhances mobility, the Gati Shakti that we spoke about, railways, roads, ropeways, use of rivers and waterways and what have you, and the social infrastructure. It talks about health, education, and skill. So if the physical infrastructure increases mobility, okay, remember the Britishers gave us railways because they wanted to move the troops across the country to control the country, or they wanted to take away the raw materials from India. So mobility is very important for economic growth, and that is given by physical infrastructure, which if Gati Shakti really takes up the root in the economy, might happen very significantly. And then you have social infrastructure, so which is about health, education, and skill, physical ability and the mental ability. So able-bodied, so a country, there are economists like Malthus, classical economists who say, what is the wealth of the economy? What is the wealth of a nation? Large number of able-bodied people is a wealth, not gold, not corn, not anything else, not foreign exchange reserves. Large number of able-bodied people is a wealth of the country. And that will depend on health, education, and skill, which enhances the ability. And there is digital infrastructure, which we saw, which will facilitate them both, which will link the two, right? But at the same time, some flip side here, investment in infrastructure is limited by the market size. So this is what happened even last year during Atmanirbhar, the MSMEs, since we've got a chosen focus for education and skill and empowerment. I'm not talking about MSMEs, but last year and this year also the credit guarantee for MSME has been extended. Okay, what has been found is that not many have come forward to take those loans. Okay, only the large MSMEs have come forward. Why is that? Because the market is not there, because the demand is not there. A point which Dr. Sarika mentioned in the passing towards the end of her presentation. Okay, so investment in infrastructure and its utility would be limited by the size of the market. So if the market demand is sluggish, what would happen? It would prevent full utilization of allotted resources. Okay. And of course, income multiplier will take place, but it will have a lag. So just because we allocate money right now, income multiplier will not happen right now, which also Sarika mentioned, and it will take a lag, during which there will be a threat of inflation. So first of all, whatever money is allotted, is it actually used? That will be one question. Secondly, will there be a market for it once it creates that capacity, and so on. So though Finance Minister had a very tough terrain to walk through, which is what we saw post-corona, very tough terrain to walk through. And imagine, India had the maximum loss in terms of GDP, according to the World Bank report. And if we see the current picture, which is projected by World Bank, we have at least covered where we were before corona. So at least covered where we were. So this itself is fairly laudable, in my opinion, from being the largest hit in terms of GDP, minus 25%, okay, to something that has covered the ground from where we began before the corona in about 2 years' time, is a great thing. But at the same time, there are people who say that, okay, everything, if you leave to digital, for example, of course, digital will have a vaster span. And as I said, nothing to scoff at digital, because if people are going for Healthify Me, as I said, people are already choosing it. So government is only extending its hand. One can look at it that way. But it's also true that online learning has not been too fruitful. Online learning has caused a lot of stress and has reduced the capacity of learning and created monotony, boredom, and reduced the interest among students, reduced the inquisitiveness among students, and so on. So these are the challenges which not just India, but the entire world is facing. And of course, as we know, necessity is the mother of invention. If digitization came because there was no other alternative, okay, the stress out of digitization will probably produce another solution in the times to come. So people, sociologists basically say that, if you make everything digital, you will just create maybe robots, okay? And you don't want to create a human society which lacks compassion, which lacks empathy, okay? There are instances, though anecdotal evidences of this, that huge amount of anger is there, when, huge amount of frustration when you can't meet people, you can't, directly interact with people. But hopefully now, since we are at the end of the tunnel of Corona, I think this opening up will start. But on the side by side, if the digital network really takes its full sweep, then probably we'll have alternatives. And the more the alternatives, the better is the story of growth. The more the alternatives, better is the story. So if I can end on that note, once again, thank you very much, Dr. Sharma, and with hearty wishes to your mother once again.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. Wonderful insight. And in fact, this particular slide is the climax of the entire discussion of today.
Yeah, just a minute, sir. Actually, these are the references.
Okay.
So those who are interested, I can send you the thing. So I generally don't make a presentation without references. So those
that's very important.
Not everybody will be interested.
Yes, yes.
People get tired even with this.
But the credit must go to the people who have basically done the initial research part.
Yes.
It's very, very important.
Yes.
Now, before thanking three ladies, I would like to thank that little child who is standing next to Dr. Suchita ma'am, because, it makes a lot of difference. It makes a lot of difference because, when we start in the morning at 4 o'clock, God bless you, child. God bless you. Now, I wish to share very quickly. We start in the morning at 4 o'clock, and it's a great learning. We have got more than 12,000 speakers right from 25th of March till this particular program, which has come today. You can well imagine I'm the greatest learner in a very quiet way, in a very humble way, and there's so much picking up. Every day, without spending single rupee, I'm getting the global knowledge. I start in the morning from Australia, New Zealand. So the first lesson which is to be taken is, there is no more teaching. There is no more learning. There is no more facilitation. It is called co-learning. That is the new buzzword which has come. And I picked it up from the professors from Australia. They have told this particular challenge, because nobody wants to change unless the pain of the change is so important in life. 19th century, this education is not more than 200 years old. This was not the original education what we were imparting. And today, if we are crying, oh, there is so much of challenge, there is so much of difficulty, there is so much of problem, I'm sorry to say that only those are crying because education has become accountable. Education has become transparent. Education is visible. And the best part is now the grandparents are sitting with the grandchildren and they ask the principal and teacher later on, excuse me, ma'am, the portion what you covered over there, that was fantastic. What exactly was that? You mean to say it's a co-learning by whole family. And another thing, the amount of, we cannot get into so many discussions today, because when you have too much of knowledge, it disturbs you so much. I have lost one very close friend of mine during this pandemic, Sir Ken Robinson. Sir Ken Robinson has got more than 4,000 videos on the YouTube. People, those are in education, you must go through Sir Ken Robinson. And Sir Ken Robinson says, what is the purpose of education? Is it economic purpose, social purpose, cultural purpose, or personal purpose of the children, what they want to do in life? Second part, 19th century belonged to Europe, 20th century belonged to America, 21st century, sorry, only half belongs to Asia, because 2050 onward, it will go to Africa. It will not stay with Asia. There is a book written by Professor Jagdish N. Sheth, who is the person who brought change in India. Before that, it was only engineering and medical. The management education first time saw the daylight and recognition in India because his first paper was put into Philip Kotler's book. And that gave the recognition what is management education. And from there, the process started. He's 83 years old and he comes once in a month on our chamber. That 1 hour is equivalent to almost 10 years of my education. Now coming to the second part. This digital part has accelerated the pace of change in education. And we got to accept it, we got to adopt it. We have taken 131 countries, analysis and research and synthesis during this COVID. How many children are really interested to go back in that particular mode in which they were learning so-called earlier? So thereby, we got to live with the reality. Whatever has come in this budget, we may not be able to see it today, but world over, if you try and see the depth of this and what all the three ladies mentioned, if it is put into the right perspective, in the right quantity, with the right notion, then the results are going to be phenomenal. The last slide was amazing, where the physical infrastructure and the social infrastructure was highlighted in a crystal clear manner, and we could get it, physical part, how it would help the social part, and how the health, education, and skills. Services exports we are talking about, and I'll close on that note. When we talk about services exports, only 46 to 47,000 children are coming for higher education to India from abroad to study. And more than 9 lakh Indians are going abroad to study. Another study which has been given is they carry only first semester fee provision with them. Rest they want to generate while working part-time, overtime, multiply time, whatever you want to call it, but Indians. And that's why there is one study available. One is the native -- and one is the people, those have come from outside. They stay, they study, they work, they grow, they prosper. It is no more brain drain. It's a brain drain gain. It is all up to us. How do we bring back that knowledge? Every Sunday evening, 8 p.m., we bring NRIs on this platform and they share their vision. And we have already got 17,000 educators, Indians abroad. Those are ready to support, empower, enthusiast, and push the Indian education ecosystem through research, through collaboration, through innovation, through partnership, whatever can be brought. I do not want to talk last, but ILO report which you have submitted on relief and recovery measures. Maybe next time I need a separate session with you because my heart is bleeding. I sleep tourism, I get up tourism, I think tourism, I trip tourism, I walk tourism, I eat tourism, because I'm the first Indian Army officer who did Masters and PhD in service industry. And I moved on deputation to the Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, and I drafted with my team India's first MBA tourism for UGC, which was introduced in 1988 in India. Somewhere I read in somebody's CV, Garware Institute in Mumbai. The tourism program was given by us from the Ministry of Tourism. I still recall that point of time in 1988. So I was very pleased to hear that. So Dr. Sucheta ma'am.
Sir, this program is still on, and it's a
bless.
working program for undergraduation as well as post-graduation.
God bless. God bless. So what my request to you would be, Dr. Sucheta ma'am, some other day, I need a detailed study because ILO plays very important role. And labor part is very important for me. 5 crore people have suffered from tourism sector alone. Travel agents, tour operator, tourist transporter, excursionist, all of them, they have gone out. Some of them, I do not want to mention how it is, what is the situation on the ground. Not even a word, one single word was there in the budget of tourism. Hospitality, they got some oxygen, they got some relief, other things are there, but tourism, can't we have agri-tourism? Can't we have rural tourism? Can't we have village tourism? Can't we have cultural tourism? Can't we have our own nature tourism? Can't we have flora and fauna tourism? Can't we have another area? You all three are sitting in Mumbai. Why not the Bollywood? They've also suffered quite a bit. We have done a lot of research. Zindagi na milegi dobara has generated 17% outbound tourism traffic from India, Spain. 2006, Krish movie being made in Singapore has generated 13% tourist traffic to Singapore. Nobody was knowing New Zealand. Kaho na pyar hai, the movie being done premiere in Delhi and how much revenue it generated, you can't imagine. And now there is a sequel coming. There are 3 ladies over here. 3 girls are going to act in that movie. And that is your, Priyanka Chopra, Alia Bhatt, and one more heroine, Katrina Kaif. 3 of them together, that's a sequel. Spanish people are spending the money on that. They want that movie to be produced. And those 3 girls acting in that. Similar way, Lord of Rings, couple of other movies we can think about. Yash Raj Chopra ji, the late Yash Raj Chopra ji, he brought Switzerland on the tourism map through Bollywood. Kaho na pyar hai, dil to pagal hai, nahi, dil to pagal hai, dilwale dulhaniya le jayenge, lamhe, chandni, mohabbatein. And there is a railway station on the name of Yash Chopra. There is a lake on the name of Yash Chopra. And the gentleman who used to contact the lens with Yash Raj Chopra is a chairman of our vertical for media entertainment, that is Manmohan Singh ji, who made Machis, who made Gulzar Sahab's Mirza Ghalib, and who brought Mauritius on the film tourism map for the first time. That is called Sautan movie was shot, first movie ever from India. That was in Port Louis in Mauritius. This all, I don't need any paper. This is coming from inside because I live tourism. Why not we should do a study that the Bollywood people are going to Thailand, South Korea, Malaysia, and Hungary. Why not they should be given incentive and they should come closer to tourism and we should have everything over here. So relief and recovery measure during the COVID MSME, which you touched, maybe one separate session I will have with you in the near future sometime, depending on your convenience. We will work out with Kalan Menon. I need it badly because ILO plays very important role, and Sita Sharma, I think her lady, that Sita Sharma in Delhi, sitting in the ILO, and she was with the last meeting for the Ministry of External Affairs along with another Harleen and other people they had come. What I want to share is, ma'am, ILO plays a very important role. ILO studies are very important. ILO, OECD, and we are working very closely with UNESCO. Eric Falt, India's head, South Asia head, is on our platform almost every 3rd month. And we are getting the people all the way from the Paris on this platform. We extend a very warm welcome once again to have all of you. Thank you very much. It was such a valuable deliberations, so much to learn and pick up from all of you. I hope Colonel Menon is very happy tonight because I didn't interrupt. I didn't stop anybody. We have taken our own time and we have done justice with the subject because economics generally, people take a little more time to understand the context of that, and covering such a wide range. if anything which can bring equality in the world, it's only through the lens of education, 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 futuristic education, need-based education, and what is desirable education. And World Economic Forum has told what we are teaching may not be required, becomes obsolete by the time we pass out from the institutions. With that, we close today's session. Thank you very much. My deepest gratitudes and thanks and heartfelt namaskar, pranam. तीनों महिलाओं को बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद and आप लोगों का बहुत बहुत आभार. And my mother is sitting just behind me and she's enjoying, and she says, such a wonderful program. It has never happened that you have taken 2 hours and 11 minutes. Beta, aaj kya kar rahe ho? Maine kaha 3 sisters have come and they are taking their own sweet time. Let them have, today's your birthday, they are celebrating. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I think you need to go back to her and enjoy the birthday.
Thank you.
Enjoy your
Namaskar.
birthday.
Namaskar. So green morning, green afternoon and green evening world over, wherever you are. Thanks for joining us.